welcome back to Share Truth Apply Scripture. I'm Jordan Shambly, joined by Cedra Sarton, and from last week, we still have with us John Darnell from Global Outreach.
It's good to be with
for
you.
We didn't
being
let
back.
him leave for a
No.
whole week.
He hasn't stepped out of this
It's been
building.
a great
Very
week
good.
here
He
at
kept
American
trying.
Family Radio.
He kept trying, but we took turns guarding the door.
Right. Yeah, security is pretty good here. So.
Now I'm going to need one of those encouraging letters from a listener to encourage me.
Right, yeah.
Here.
Yeah, well, we all need encouragement sometimes. But anyway, so now that our audience is thoroughly lost and confused, let's explain what this episode is about. So we're picking up. This episode is actually closing out our week of the Orange Letter campaign.
Yep.
Last week we kicked it off with a great episode about what the Orange Letter campaign was, kind of the history, and introducing our partnership this time with Global Outreach. So let's kind of just to recap for those who don't know what the Orange Letter campaign is. It is Engage's effort. It's a yearly effort to take a week. Let our listeners have the opportunity to reach out to persecuted Christians and missionaries around the world with letters of prayer and encouragement. That's essentially what what the Orange Letter campaign is.
So go ahead and write down this email, orange@afa.net.
Mm-hmm.
So you will have it when you're ready with your letter. You can send it in.
I don't think it's too late for people to send it in. What was
No.
the cutoff date?
November the 8th. They have
November the 8th.
One more week.
Okay, yeah. So
More
yeah,
week.
be praying about that letter. And as you're listening to this, maybe the Lord will move on your heart with what to say, and just send that in to orange@afa.net.
And so if you're wanting to know what we're looking for, about 200 words or less.
Yeah.
Just words of encouragement and prayer. If you don't know what to say, you can write. Just let these missionaries know that you love them, that you care about them, and that you're praying for them. Maybe include some scripture that's helped you through a hard time, something you come across that has encouraged you. So it's really simple. Email it to orange@afa.net. Again, we're looking at sending these letters at Christmas time. These missionaries are separated from a lot of their families. They maybe just have spouse, kids, but they're separated from parents, aunts, uncles, like the whole usual Christmas traditions that they're used to. And so it can feel isolated, lonely when you're not there with your extended family to celebrate. And so we just want you to reach out to them and let them know that you're thinking of them during that time.
Yeah. Yep. So let's start this segment off. This is going to be about an in-depth look at who Global Outreach is. We already talked about Orange Letter campaign. And so, John, for our listeners who might not know, essentially just kind of briefly, what is Global Outreach?
Or not so briefly, because we're going in depth.
Yeah.
We're diving in.
Sure. So we're an almost 50-year-old missions agency. You know, typically we use the language missions agency to talk about organizations that partner with the local church in the sending of career missionaries around the world. So, you know, biblically, we believe the church is the sender.
Yeah.
If you read Scripture, the Apostle Paul didn't write to Global Outreach and to the church at Corinth, right? I mean, there was no sending agency. But we found that because many of us have been missionaries on the field and understand the uniqueness that comes with moving a family around the world, serving cross-culturally, taking your, as I mentioned last time, my wife and I took a 5-month on the field. We had a baby on the field. That would be a great episode for you guys to do it. That's the birthing story in Ecuador. But it was, you know, we have a unique experience that we can bring alongside the local church, who in an ideal world has been discipling, investing in, and raising up believers like we see in the New Testament to send out to go and make disciples.
Right.
And as a result, we should see people saved, churches planted,
Wow.
and movements spread, right? So we want to partner with the local church. You know, and also missions agencies. I think of great agencies like Missionary Aviation Fellowship, MAF, airplanes, you know, reaching indigenous peoples that you couldn't access before, or Wycliffe Bible translators. You know, they have a specific mission, Bible translation, people having the Bible in their heart language. For us, we want the missionary who has been living in that culture, who understands the culture, the context, and what the needs are and how to best reach that culture, driving our strategy on the ground. Yeah. So I'm not going to go over to China, where we have a missionary, and say, you should be doing it this way. I've never been to China, Jordan. I can't tell them how to do their ministry. And so what we want to do is say, hey, how can we help your family thrive on mission with Christ? Because can you imagine, guys, and I'll just sort of slow down here, you feel called to be a missionary, and maybe you go to seminary. If you're going to do theological education, maybe whatever your preparation is, you spend a year or two doing that. You spend a year doing fundraising to go to the field. You go and you do a year of language school. So you're 5 years in to this journey of being a missionary. You go through a really tough first year on the field. You want to be there your whole life. By year 2, you don't have the support from your sending church back in the States. Your funding is struggling. You don't have the money, so you don't take your kids for a weekend away, or maybe you can't put them in that school that would set them up for success. And and you're saying, man, hey, are we going to make it? Are we going to do it? And too often those missionaries come back home broken.
Right.
I'm thinking, man, what a shame. All this investment of their time and preparation and money and all these different things to get them there. 2 years in, somebody that was a career missionary is back home broken.
Wow.
And kids are caught up in that, and the,
Yeah.
the whole family. And so what can I do if I'm listening in California, if I'm listening in Missouri, what can I do to help those missionaries, right? And so, Global Outreach, we have almost 300 people working in nearly 48 countries around the world. We have orphanages. We have theological education. I think of Global Theological Seminary in Jinja, Uganda, where pastors are being trained and sent out. And now that's actually run by nationals. So it's not the American missionary trying to control ministry. It's empowering others. That's the vision we have. We want to see locals empowered and carrying the mission forward. We have schools for missionary kids. I'm thinking of Jinja, Uganda, or we have a principal at Dakar Academy in Dakar, Senegal. Just a wide variety of programs, camps, and different things, because again, our missionaries on the ground are driving, right? They're driving strategy. So we're going to have a bunch of different strategies depending on the context that they're serving in. We're almost 50 years old. We have grown tremendously, especially in the last 10 years. And one of the biggest things that we see is how can we, you mentioned last episode, if the listeners listen to it, you mentioned the IMB and Growing Up Southern Baptist, I did too, the Lottie Moon offering. And sometimes we think, our job is we give the Lottie Moon offering. Yes. And we need that relationship with that missionary on the field to encourage them so they can keep going. It's not just, the agency's going to do it all, because I can't. We got 15 people working in an office in Pontotoc, Mississippi.
Right.
300 missionaries plus their kids. I mean, we can't do it all. We can't be everything. So that's just a little bit about who we are, wanting the missionary to thrive on the field, the whole family to be prepared for what they're going to encounter, and relying on the local church to help give a boost to these missionaries through prayer, financial support, and encouragement.
Wow.
I really like, though, how y'all let the missionary set the pattern for how they're going to reach people, because every culture is different. You mentioned what is it?
Wycliffe.
Wycliffe.
Yeah.
I always have trouble pronouncing it.
Yeah, it's okay.
We actually have a former employee who used to work with us who works with them, and him talking about the specific struggles of trying to reach them with their language and their traditions.
In Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, that would be really hard to sit in an office. I mean, even though you are, yourself, you and your family have been on the field before, well, that won't translate to another country.
That's right.
And so I do like the fact that y'all allow the missionary to set the tone for how they reach the people. I mean, they use scripture, they use the Bible as their guide, but in the end, they know how to navigate that area better.
Yeah.
And I'd say one more trend in missions that we're trying to change is, I told you guys we went on the field with a 5-month-old baby, and actually had this conversation last week with another couple who has a 1-year-old going to Ecuador, and they said, John, you'll never believe the question we get about our child. I said, no, I will believe it, because people look at you and they say, are you going to take the baby with you? It's like, of course we're going to take our child with us. Like, God wasn't surprised when he called us that he knew we were going to have children, and babies are born in Ecuador too.
Absolutely.
But well-meaning people, but there was a mentality over the years that was ministry at all costs. So if you went on the mission field, you sent your kids to boarding school, or you found out something different, and that was the mentality for years. And we're saying, wait a second. We want to move away from the kids being like the cans dragging behind a just married car.
Yeah, that's good.
On the way to the field, we have to invest in them too. We have to prepare the whole family, because, guys, can you imagine being 5
Wow.
and moving from wherever in the U.S. to the bush in Africa.
No, I cannot.
I
I
can't.
can't.
I
I
can't. I
can't
can't either.
imagine that. I'm 28 and I can't imagine doing that now.
You know, and so we
Mm.
really, as an organization, so we shifted from only adult training to whole family training.
That's
Because
awesome.
That's
we
amazing.
want the 2-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 18-year-old to know you are loved by God.
That's amazing.
We want your identity to be in Him. If you're rooted in Him, you can be transplanted anywhere,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And so helping them understand that has been a big emphasis for us in this season.
And I love that too because it's easy for us to think about when a missionary family or when a missionary period goes to another country that their focus is going to be the people of that country, the people who live there
Right.
in that culture, and we forget that one of the primary mission fields is the family.
That's
you
right.
know, and like I have 2 children. I mean, my first and foremost purpose when I preach the gospel to anyone is to them,
That's right.
as well to my wife and myself. So I love that you include that in there, and they're not excluded from that, and that's something as well. When our audience, when you guys
That's right.
write those letters, keep that in mind too. That you're not just writing to a missionary who's alone on. I mean, you might be writing to that person, but you might as well also be writing to a whole family. And
That's
so keep that in mind. Keep in mind that there might be very young children. There might be a spouse or a teenager, you know, and there could be there's a lot of family dynamics that could be playing into
right.
this as well.
Yeah.
So while you're praying about this and while you're searching the scripture for something to say, I think keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I will say that if you have personal experience as a missionary, really use that. Bring that up. Maybe share your story in the letter. We will still ask that you keep it 200 words or
Yes.
less for us to be able to send them. But maybe put a little bit of your story in there to encourage them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of stories, next segment we're going to get into some stories that John has from his experience as a missionary, and I'm looking forward to that. But I just want to again say the email is orange@afa.net. And I said this last episode. I don't want any letters that haven't been prayed over. So please
take time to pray.
please take time to think about this and pray. You do have until November 8th to get those into us. And we are so looking forward to having these letters come in. So again, that's orange@afa.net. Write that down. Pray about the letters. Stay tuned for next segment. We're going to listen to some stories from John about being a missionary. So stay tuned.